This is the Beatles singles collection 7-inch box which came out recently, and it's 23 7-inch singles. It's all their UK singles, including Free as a Bird and Real Love, collected in this rather swish 7-inch box set. And I thought before we start and have a look at the actual contents, we can sort of reflect on the consistency of the presentation here. So we can see that they've gone for the same style as the Beatles in Mono vinyl box, which came a few years after the Beatles in Mono CD box here. So in some ways it's a bit of a shame, because you could argue it lacks a bit of personality and individualism. But on the other hand, there is a nice consistency across this ongoing collection of Beatles reissues. So you can look at it as you wish. Nothing on the spine instantly, so if you've got that on your shelf you can't actually read that it's a Beatles box set. But nevertheless, it's a nice looking package. It's got a glossy outer finish. It's got an inner drawer. Normally these tend to have a cutaway here, but it's actually full square. And then inside we've got the 23 singles. There's also a booklet as well, which we'll look at in a minute. Now, the Beatles 7-inch records were obviously incredibly important. They sold millions of copies, and while the band established themselves as an album band, they kept releasing singles, standalone singles, right until the end of their career. The Ballad of John and Yoko was the last one, I think. So this collection is significant. There have been other collections in the past, but we can have a look through these now. What Apple and Universal have done is they've chosen to do some research and dig out some foreign language sleeves to put on these. So the purist might say, well, these shouldn't have any picture sleeves at all, but I don't think anyone's trying to pretend that these are anything other than reproductions. So from a visual point of view, to be pleasing, every single is represented by a unique country, and the design was as it was at that time. So anyway, let's take a look through the singles. So starting off with Love Me Do. This is actually the original American sleeve as issued on Tolly Records before Capitol decided to put them out under pressure from EMI in the UK. All these singles are spined sleeves, and every single comes with a poly-lined inner sleeve. This is heavyweight vinyl as well, incorrectly noted as 180 grams on the press release. Of course, it's a lot lighter than that because it's a 7-inch and not a 12-inch vinyl. Love Me Do. B-side is P.S. I Love You. Both songs ended up on the first album, of course. Quite a nice cover design. The Beatles' second single, almost a #1 in the UK. It was #1 on one of the charts, but it wasn't #1 on the chart that eventually became regarded as the official chart. So it was #2 on that chart. So that's why this isn't regarded as an official #1. Another single which had a B-side which ended up on the album. It's quite interesting, the first two singles, given the Beatles became known as having amazing B-sides that were unique. The first two singles, both B-sides were on the album. This sleeve is the original Italian design, and it's got quite a nice label, this one actually. It's a kind of part blue Parlophone label. Everything slides in very easily, so the 7-inch slides into this sleeve very easily. This sleeve slides into the outer sleeve very easily, so there's none of that kind of trying to shove something in. It does make a lot of difference if you want to play these and get them in and out easily and quickly. From me to you, this is the first official #1. Thank You Girl is the B-side, and this design is from Norway actually. A bit of an advert there for other releases on the same label. And it's got a variation of the original Parlophone label. She Loves You, this is the fourth single. This was how it was released in Greece. And see here, purple label. Interestingly, if you look at this cover, it doesn't actually say She Loves You on the front anyway, which is somewhat bizarre. And the B-side is I'll Get You, which is a great B-side. The best way really to enjoy the Beatles B-sides is via the original 7-inches. My dad had all the original monos in the 70s when I was growing up, so I used to play all his records, all the original 7-inches which didn't have picture sleeves. I'd just flip them and play them, and you know, it feels quite an authentic way to get into the music rather than just a collection of past masters or whatever. Lost Beatles, I Want to Hold Your Hand. Now this is from Chile. Fantastic sleeve. I mean, nothing written on this sleeve about the song. And that's the label there. The B-side is This Boy to I Want to Hold Your Hand. Can't Buy Me Love and You Can't Do That is from Austria. Now this is quite a creative sleeve, I think. This is obviously the Beatles mop top kind of wig design. The B-side is You Can't Do That, which is on the album. And reasonably interesting label design there. Parlophone in that thin font is quite unusual. Next up is A Hard Day's Night. This sleeve is from the Netherlands. The B-side is Things We Said Today, which is also on the album. So black label. Quite a nice sleeve actually. I like the black and the orange, and it's a good black and white photo. Same one on each side though. You do get the general feeling they didn't take that much care with the picture sleeves, the foreign language ones. I Feel Fine. This is a non-album single. She's a Woman was the B-side. And this sleeve is from Sweden. Picture sleeve, quite unusual actually. There's no... the way that you've got the track at the top and the band at the bottom, it's a bit of an unusual layout. Brilliant single, I Feel Fine, She's a Woman, very good. Ticket to Ride is from Spain. This is from Spain. Yes It Is the B-side, another great B-side. And this is on the Odeon imprint actually, this one. Help is up next. Now this is from Belgium, this sleeve. Quite an interesting front cover there. I'm Down is the B-side. See Help from the film of the same name. Same as a lot of these, there's no difference on the front or the back, which is slightly weird I think. This has got a Parlophone black design. Now We Can Work It Out and Day Tripper is from France. It's quite a nice blue cover, although it's got some sort of fake signatures on the front here, this one. At least it's got a different design on the back, I guess. Again, this is on the sort of Odeon imprint. Quite an unusual label design there. Paperback Writer is from Turkey. Again, Odeon imprint. You'll recognise the cover here from the Yesterday and Today session. This is the one that replaced the Butcher cover. Quite a distinctive label design there. Yellow and orange swirl. Rain, one of the Beatles' very, very best B-sides. This is a fantastic single, Paperback Writer and Rain. So this is Eleanor, Rigby and Yellow Submarine from Argentina. Now you might be wondering why the cover is using Beatles for Sale from 1964 on a 1966 single. Your guess is as good as mine, and I think the answer is just people did stupid things in those days. But Apple and Universal are keeping with it as it was originally issued at the time. Even if it was wrong, that's it. This is authentic to what actually happened. So this isn't just Odeon, this is Odeon Pops. Strawberry Fields Forever is probably quite familiar because this image, they've used this a lot for reissues and picture discs over the years. This is actually the Australian design. So that's the back. But the front is certainly familiar, isn't it? And then label design, kind of reasonably familiar. It's quite similar to the British one. All You Need Is Love, 1967 single. This is the As It Was in West Germany at the time. And there's even on here what looks like an advert for Beatles medallions. The B-side is Baby You're a Rich Man, which is obviously a very, very good B-side. Another variation of the Odeon imprint label there. I should say while we're going through these that I think there's one or two exceptions, but these singles have all been cut all analog from the original tape. So I think there's been various debates about how good it sounds online, but this video isn't really about the sound, it's more about the presentation. Hello Goodbye is from Mexico. At least the photo here is the right kind of era. Again, it's another kind of swirly design. B-side is I Am the Walrus. I Am the Walrus, of course, had already been on the Magical Mystery Tour EP by this point. Now then, Lady Madonna in Japan. First and I think only gatefold in this package. It's pretty cool. So you get all the lyrics. The B-side is George's The Inner Light. And yeah, pretty cool. This one looks really nice. Check out the inner sleeve. Quite minimal, quite nicely designed, as you might expect from Japan. Now Hey Jude is from South Africa, except it's got Revolution backed with Hey Jude, so certainly it appears as if Revolution was the A-side in South Africa, which I don't know whether that's actually accurate or not. John was always a bit peeved with Paul because he'd come up with some brilliant song, and John was always desperate to get the A-side, especially in the later period Beatles. Paul kept bumping John to the B-side, if you think of Hello Goodbye, for example. There's Hey Jude. Revolution. It's interesting, these don't actually say A or B side on them, so quite a kind of creative, quite an interesting picture sleeve actually. Get Back is from Denmark, and this is another interesting kind of picture sleeve. This was from 1968 on the so-called Mad Day Out, when they went around London taking lots of different pictures. It's very recognisable from Paul in his pink suit. Get Back came out in early 1969, so it's not too far out. Brilliant B-side, Don't Let Me Down. Of course, there was a massive gap between Get Back coming out as a single and Let It Be, the album, coming out. It's easy to forget that, because we had Abbey Road and all the Abbey Road singles in the middle, of course. So this is, I mentioned it earlier, this is the last non-album single, The Ballad of John and Yoko. There's the band looking really happy on the front. Paul and John famously recorded this by themselves, without Ringo and George. I should say that this is the Portuguese sleeve. This is from Portugal. Getting towards the end now, this is from Israel. This is Something. For some reason they flipped the photo from Abbey Road, which doesn't really make any sense, because George wrote Something, so you think maybe they'd put George there, and I don't know. Yeah, if they hadn't flipped this photo, then George would be there, and then the other three would be there, and you wouldn't have all these back to front registration. So it doesn't make any sense whatsoever, but what can you do? And this is the first single of the Beatles not to get to number 1 or number 2, so George was always complaining he didn't get an A-side, and when he did get an A-side it got to number 4 in the chart, so what can you do about that? Something's obviously a great song, so I very much doubt that John or Paul said "Told You So." But Come Together is the B-side. And then Let It Be, this is the last UK single of the original era. This got to number 2. And when it was re-recorded for Ferry Aid in the 80s, that got to number 1. So that actually beat the Beatles' original. A brilliant, wacky B-side. You Know My Name, Look Up the Number. And this is actually a replica of the UK single, so this is the only one that's specific to the UK. It's a bit of a boring front cover really, because it's just like the Let It Be sleeve, so you kind of get the feeling towards the end the whole creativity had slightly gone out the window. And last but not least, Free as a Bird. This is the And Real Love. These are the singles that were released to support Anthology 1 and Anthology 2. And they never did one for Anthology 3. Rumoured that George vetoed it. I think Grow Old With Me was going to be one for Anthology 3, but George had had enough by that point. By the mid-90s, everything was being released consistently, so this sleeve design is designated as worldwide. And you do get a booklet with the box set. This is a little perfect bound booklet, quite glossy. Just takes you through the singles. Interestingly, and this inside page shows you how they were released in the UK at the time. So only Strawberry Fields, Let It Be actually had picture sleeves at the time. So that's the authentic version of how it would look. I mean, I'm not including Free as a Bird and Real Love in that. Obviously they did as well, but from the original era, only 2 singles had picture sleeves, which is actually less than I thought. So this just takes you through single by single, gives you a little bit of a overview of each single, a few studio shots. Kevin Howlett has written this. Obviously he's done a lot over the last few years. That's the booklet. So there we have it, 23 singles. Has any band ever released a better collection of singles than the Beatles' original 22 UK singles, and then of course the one in the 90s? I don't think they have. Answers on a postcard if you disagree with that. But it's a wonderful collection of music. It's not cheap. This is about £180, but I don't think you can really go wrong, can you? Certainly if you don't have any originals and you've been thinking about picking them up, then this is a pretty easy way to do it. We may well see an EPs box follow this at some point in the future. It'd be quite nice if they did this on CD as well, but we'll wait to see if anything emerges. But for now, this is Paul from Super Deluxe Edition looking at the Beatles Singles Collection 7-inch box set.